Democracy has no shortage of problems, even in the best of circumstances. From opposing interests to corporate interference to the slog of the bureaucratic process, it is no wonder many choose to forgo democratic governments in favor of more centralized power. Still, democracies provide essential protections for the citizens of a nation when working correctly, with the checks and balances of each branch of government not allowing for any one person to gain enough power to become tyrannical. But can these values still survive in a post-nuclear apocalypse full of warlords and despots? When the world ended on October 23rd, 2077, only a select few were allowed into the vaults, and even fewer made it into ones that were safe. In Southern California, Vault 15 was filled to the brim with ethnically and religiously diverse dwellers, quickly leading to conflict within the isolated community. Within 2 generations, the tension had crescendoed, leading to the dwellers blasting their way out of the vault and scattering across the wasteland. Most would form various raider gangs that would become infamous in the coming years. One group, however, chose to settle just west of the abandoned vault, using the vault's Garden of Eden creation kit, creating the community of Shady Sands. Over the next 20 years, Shady Sands would slowly grow into a small agrarian society, with the help of trade from the local settlements of Junktown and the Hub, but it was not an easy 2 decades. Beset on all sides by raiders, rad scorpions, and the general harshness of the wasteland, Shady Sands was surviving, not thriving. This would change in 2161, when a dweller from Vault 13, on a quest to find a replacement water chip for his vault, discovered the struggling community. This vault dweller, along with his companion, Ian, destroyed the rad scorpion colony, helped create sustainable farming practices, and all but obliterated the Khan's raider gang, who had kidnapped the daughter of the village elder, Tandy. By the following year, the Vault Dweller had moved on, passing into legends, but had left Shady Sands in a prosperous state, leading it to expand both its borders and influence. Aradesh, the leader of the village, used the town's newfound safety as a way to develop its trade reputation, making Shady Sands into a powerful trading hub. With its increased trade, a cultural identity began to form between what were formerly mostly isolated communities across California. With the settlements becoming closely tied, in 2186, Aradesh proposed a radical idea: a post-war government made up of representatives from every town in California. As a proof of concept, Shady Sands formed a council to draft a constitution, and Junktown joined with the settlement to form the state of Shady. Soon, the states of Los Angeles, Maxon, Dayglow, and eventually the Hub were formed, creating the new California Republic with Aradesh as its first president in 2189. The NCR would grow to have many of the accommodations one would expect of a pre-war nation. The Republic would begin printing its own currency, completely replacing the widely adopted bottle cap. A military would be formed with its own Special Forces task force, the prestigious NCR Rangers. For the first time in many people's lives, they weren't fighting to just scrape out a meager existence. They were allowed to take up normal jobs like a farmhand or factory worker. Aradesh wouldn't serve as president for long, as in 2196, both he and Seth the former captain of the Shady Sands Guard and the first of the NCR Rangers, left Shady Sands in search of the vault the mysterious savior had come from decades earlier, but they were never seen again. As his replacement, his daughter Tandy was unanimously voted by the NCR Council to become the NCR's second president. Under Tandy, the Republic would enter a golden age. Massive efforts to rebuild pre-war infrastructure were undertaken, clearing roadways and making travel between cities easier and safer. Under her reign, businesses in the Republic flourished, with companies like the Stockmen's Association becoming incredibly powerful, enough to influence NCR politics to their favor. With Southern California thriving, Tandy turned her sights to expansion. Shady Sands marked the NCR's northern border, but Tandy hoped to expand the Republic's border to encompass the trading powerhouse of New Reno, the mining town of Redding, and the technologically advanced Vault City, built outside of Vault 8. Reno was a town of gangsters and despots, and was the site of a power struggle between four vicious crime families: the Bishops, the Mordinos, the Salvatores, and the Wrights. The Bishops, among the most powerful of the families, was explicitly pro-NCR, attempting to form an alliance between the NCR, Reno, and Vault City. When Vault City refused, Reno hired mercenaries to harass them, hoping this would cause them to fold. Redding was another battleground, with the NCR, Reno, and Vault City battling for influence over the rustic mining town, none of them being able to gain enough power over the miners to bring about the preferred outcome. Vault City was an isolationist and xenophobic society, fiercely independent from anyone they considered a mutant. Denying the NCR and Reno's offers of protection, Vault City was more than capable of defending itself from both Wasteland raiders and Reno's mercenaries. Initially, Tandy had trouble enforcing her expansionist policies. Vault 15, while the ancestral home of the NCR, had been abandoned by the Republic due to scavenging rights disputes, leading it to be occupied by squatters and a successor to the Khans. Worse, legal loopholes allowed for slaver tents to be set up right outside of the main gates to Shady Sands, making a mockery of the NCR's values of equality. It wasn't until 2241 that these problems began to resolve, with the arrival of the chosen one of the village Arroyo, the grandson of the Vault Dweller that saved Shady Sands 80 years earlier. The chosen one was able to keep the bishops in power, ensuring Reno's entry into the NCR. In Redding, they recovered a ship capable of running powerful mining equipment. After giving the ship to Marge LaBarge, a pro-NCR businesswoman who ran a mine in Redding, LaBarge was able to become the mayor of Redding and joined the NCR soon thereafter. The fate of Vault City, however, whether it was eventually pressured into joining the NCR or remained independent, has been lost to the ravenous sands of the Wasteland. What is known for sure, however, is that near the end of 2242, a massive explosion off the coast of San Francisco lit up the sky. This was the Enclave, the remnants of the pre-war US government, whose oil rig base had just been destroyed by that same chosen one. The Enclave had been bent on genocide, planning on releasing a bioweapon to kill everyone in the Wasteland except for themselves. With their plot now exposed and their main base destroyed, the Enclave quickly made enemies of the NCR and the Brotherhood of Steel, a military order and regional power dedicated to protecting technology from those unworthy of wielding it. The NCR and Brotherhood were swift in their destruction of the Enclave, and within a few years, the Republic had successfully sieged and taken the Enclave's vertibird refueling station of Navarro, their vertibirds and advanced technology with it. Enclave remnants scattered across the Republic, fleeing to the edges of the frontier to escape persecution. The Enclave's defeat would create tension between the NCR and the Brotherhood. While the two had enjoyed a close relationship up to this point, with the NCR even naming one of its states after the Brotherhood's founder, Roger Maxon, the NCR's seizure of Navarro and the Enclave's technology, despite the Brotherhood's objections, would lead to the two straining their relationship. Tandy would die in office in 2248 at the age of 103, after entering her 11th consecutive term, leaving her vice president, Joanna Tibbet, as president. Tibbet ended up being an ineffectual president, beginning the destruction of what limited market protections existed and saw the start of the NCR's decades of resource shortages. Tibbet's demise would ultimately come due to her timidness when it came to expansion. In 2253, 38 NCR citizens who had moved into the frontier of the Mojave Wasteland were massacred by raiders. Tibbet's response didn't satisfy the vengeful nation, leading to a vote of no confidence passing against her and her replacement by Wendell Peterson, who moved 3 battalions of infantry into the Mojave to project power and safeguard settlements. Soon thereafter, Peterson's administration would face another foreign threat, the Brotherhood. Relationships between the Brotherhood and NCR had continued to deteriorate until all-out war commenced. While the Brotherhood saw initial success, destroying the NCR's gold reserves and crippling the value of the NCR dollar, the NCR's overwhelming manpower superiority allowed them to take losses that the Brotherhood could not afford, both because of their strict recruitment policies and their use of impossible-to-replicate pre-war equipment. It wasn't long before the Brotherhood was forced out of California and into the Mojave. The 2270s would see the NCR's formal expansion into the Mojave Wasteland, with the establishment of Mojave Outpost along Interstate 15 in 2272. After the NCR signed the Ranger Unification Treaty, folding the independent Desert Rangers into the Republic, many of the violent tribes in the area were pacified by General Aaron Kimball, allowing NCR settlers to flood the Mojave, eager to forge new lives for themselves in this land of opportunity. Over the next couple of years, Republic forces expanded into the area, discovering the New Vegas Strip and the still-functional Hoover Dam. In 2274, the NCR signed the Treaty of New Vegas with Mr. House, the mysterious overseer of the Strip, granting the NCR the ability to establish bases around the area of the Strip and majority rights to use the power produced by the dam in exchange for recognition of New Vegas as a sovereign entity and 5% of the dam's power diverted towards the Strip. In 2276, as part of their continued efforts to pacify the Mojave, the NCR laid siege to Helios 1, a pre-war solar plant occupied by the Brotherhood of Steel during Operation Sunburst. Once again, the Brotherhood's technological superiority was no match for the NCR's superior numbers, forcing the Brotherhood to abandon Helios after extreme losses. Things soon took a turn for the worse in the Mojave, however, as a power from the east made themselves known to the NCR, bent on dominating the Mojave and taking its population as slaves. Caesar's Legion. Once a citizen of the NCR, Caesar was a warlord who had used his charisma and knowledge of military history to turn the tribes of Arizona, New Mexico, and Colorado into a singular, brutal, militaristic society. While the NCR, now headed by President Kimball, who successfully started a political career after retiring from the military, prepared for war, the Legion was launching small raids on NCR facilities, such as Fort Aradesh. Tensions would finally come to a head when the Legion launched an attack on the NCR garrison at Hoover Dam in 2277. Led by the Malpais legate, waves of legionnaires flooded the dam, overwhelming the ill-prepared NCR. Sending their recruits first to die on the front line, while the veterans stayed in reserves, the Legion forced the NCR from the dam, making them retreat into Boulder City. Their retreat covered by Ranger sharpshooters and the 1st Recon Sniper Battalion. Confident in his victory, the legate ordered his forces to pursue the NCR and annihilate whatever remained. Unfortunately for the legate, he had fallen straight into a trap. The city was rigged to explode, and, once enough legionnaires were inside, the city was destroyed, killing or maiming the majority of the legate's army. It wasn't long before the NCR was able to push the Legion back to the dam, and then back across the Colorado River. Even after this failure, Caesar began to prepare for his eventual second attack on the dam from his field headquarters on Fortification Hill. Small skirmishes consistently broke out between the two armies. The NCR was forced to abandon all holdings east of the Colorado after their loss at the Arizona spillway. Legion strike teams attempted to take the cities of Ashton and Hopeville from the Republic, crippling their supply lines, but the cities were destroyed in a mysterious disaster, leaving the Long 15 as the NCR's only way into the Mojave. The Legion began making alliances with the tribes too far to be conquered, such as the Whitelegs of Utah and the Great Khans, yet another incarnation of the Khans Raider gang, turned vengeful after much of their women and children were massacred by the NCR at Bitter Springs due to a miscommunication. Throughout this war, the Legion ran a carefully planned demoralization campaign against the NCR. After the city of Nelson was captured, injured NCR troopers were purposely left in earshot of the nearby Californian base, Camp Forlorn Hope. Anyone who tried to rescue their comrades soon discovered that the injured soldiers were booby-trapped with landmines. The town of Nipton was destroyed and almost everyone killed, with the smoke being visible from the NCR's Mojave outpost, letting them know the Legion could reach across the river and attack whenever they pleased. Camp Searchlight was destroyed by a radiation bomb, turning all of the soldiers stationed there into ghouls. This would all culminate in a second battle at Hoover Dam, where forces from across the Mojave would take part in a decisive fight for the fate of this corner of the Wasteland. Regardless of how this battle turns out, however, the NCR would face another crippling setback, one they might not be able to recover from. Shady Sands, the longtime capital of the NCR, was destroyed in a mysterious explosion, killing Kimball and most of the NCR's government. Now, what remains of the NCR is little more than bands of survivors, trying to pick up the pieces while defending against a renewed Brotherhood offensive.